Welcome to This Sporting Planet, the world's view of sport. This week from the Americas, Australia, the UK via Canada, all will be explained. This is a show that brings together international voices who are passionate about sport and live and work in the regions where major events are taking place. We've all been waiting patiently, but one of the biggest sports leagues in the world is back. Yes, a new NFL season is underway with the Philadelphia Eagles looking to defend their title they won all the way back in February, Kate.
That's right, Todd. Hundreds of millions of eyes around the globe will follow their favourite teams and players over the next 6 months. 32 teams. And the beauty of this league is even if your team finished rock bottom, Todd, last year, they could still be Super Bowl champions this time around. So, who should we watch out for this season? Plus, we're going to head north of the border up to Canada to ask why there are no NFL teams up there. They have baseball, they have soccer, basketball, and ice hockey, but no NFL. And what is stopping this sport-mad nation from getting an NFL franchise? We'll try to answer all those questions and more in this episode of This Sporting Planet. Kate Allman here in Australia alongside Todd Harris from the USA, and later on in this episode we'll be talking all things NFL with broadcaster and author Anthony Wootton. But first, Todd, we need to reflect on the latest chapter in an enthralling tennis rivalry that took place in the US Open. As many of us predicted, it was Carlos Alcaraz and Jannik Sinner who met in the men's final, and it was a blockbuster encounter yet again, with Alcaraz coming out on top in 4 sets. What are your thoughts, Todd? It was impressive, a dominant display from Alcaraz.
Yeah, no question about it, Kate. I think the great thing about the U.S. Open is the fact that it comes on the heels of Wimbledon, which has so much tradition, the dressed in white, the manners like that, and then you take it to New York City, and it's completely different. The matches go well into the night, past midnight sometimes, 1 a.m., it's just a 180 turn from Wimbledon, which I think is kind of cool. So it's a little more aggressive, the hard court surface, but I just, no surprise. I mean, Alcaraz and Sinner and Alcaraz, it doesn't matter. You look back, the last 8 majors went to one of these two guys. So until a third person steps in, Kate, I think we're in for more of the same. And on the women's side, I just want to say how impressed I was by Anisimova. The fact that she got double bageled, 6-0, 6-0 at Wimbledon, comes back, U.S. Open, beats the person that double bageled her in Swiatek, and then gets to the final. She does lose to Sabalenka, who put on a great showing. But to me, that was my big takeaway is Alcaraz and Sinner. We're going to see a lot more of this for a long time. And I was really impressed with Anisimova and the resilience. She got herself back to the final again.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you on both counts there, Todd. Alcaraz and Sinner, both very young, 22 and 24. We have so much left in this tennis rivalry. It's kind of exciting, but also scary how good they are at such young ages. By the way, I just think at the moment Alcaraz has that little extra edge over Sinner, and I think he showed it in that final. His serve was on point, but also he had a lot of creativity in different shots. He was doing drop shots, he was kind of slicing them. He had a whole arsenal of weapons, whereas Sinner really standing at the baseline doing his kind of slugging from the baseline. I think he's going to have to change things up, and he actually admitted in his post-match interview that he is going to look back at what he wasn't able to match with Alcaraz and probably change a few things in his own game. So it'll be fascinating to watch that. By the way, the third guy, that's probably Djokovic. He's still around, and he's still kind of always coming third, not quite making it to that final. If you're him, do you kind of throw in the towel at some point and go, I'm not going to get back into those top 2? You're so close. You are third in the world mostly, and still not making finals. So really interesting to follow his decision-making process and how he might change things as well. Also, the women's, fantastic to see Sabalenka get over that mental hump. I think we talked about it last episode when we were talking about tennis and Wimbledon, the mental barrier that she obviously was facing in those finals. She's got through it, and she admitted herself, she didn't let her emotions take control, which was fascinating to see. And congratulations to her. What a powerful win.
I think going back to your comment about who's going to be number 3 is, look back, a decade or so ago when it was Nadal and Federer, and then Djokovic was the third guy that came on and he took over. I know he's looking for that next, he wants one more major. He needs one more major, and his next opportunity is going to be in your neck of the woods at the Australian Open. Do you think at his age, and we're going to talk about this in the NFL, guys in their 40s, athletes pushing it, do you think at his age he can get it done, or is it going to take something like Alcaraz having to an injury or Sinner not being on his game for Djokovic to get that last big major.
That's a great point. I actually discussed exactly this today, and I think it's going to have to be something that injures one of the other guys, or maybe somehow one of them meet each other in the semi-final. The other two are just so dominant at the moment. I don't think Djokovic has a way in unless something happens to them. So watch this space. It'll be fascinating. And then if so, where does he kind of pull the plug? I think he wants to go out on high.
Sure. And I don't blame him. I mean, he's such a magnificent career. But I don't know if you were the same as me in my part of the world, down under. I had multiple screens going. I had the NFL Red Zone going. I had the U.S. Open. And before we get off the U.S. Open, Kate, this is an old man thing to say, which I am. But the speed and pace at which tennis is now, especially in the men's game and on the women's game, to me, it's mind-boggling. I don't know if it was just the hard court surface, the U.S. Open, but the shots they were hitting, the pace, the precision, the power. I know it's a little onomatopoeia there, but I was blown away. And then I had Red Zone on the other screen, which was bouncing around the NFL. So it was definitely an overload Sunday for me.
Overload Sunday. And also the NFL, we'll talk about this, but what a crazy first week to start things off. So all around, so much sport to watch. We are so thrilled to be bringing it to you from around the globe with This Sporting Planet. And just a reminder, in between episodes, you can keep up to date with all the global sports news on our social channels and on YouTube page, including full-length interviews with all of our guests. So make sure you check them out. And whilst you're there, give us a follow, subscribe, share with all your friends and family. And plus, if you're there, leave us a review if you don't mind as well.
All right, Kate, so let's turn our attention to the NFL now. We look back on the first week of the new season, plus preview of what we can expect for the rest of the campaign. And help us do that, we're delighted to be joined by NFL broadcaster and author Anthony Wootton. Anthony, how are you, my friend?
Very good, thank you. Yeah, you know what? We've had week one of NFL action. Excited. Great time of the year. We got so much to look forward to.
All right, well, just give you a reminder for those of you who aren't familiar how the NFL works. It's an 18-week season. There are 32 teams. They're split across 2 conferences. Now, each side plays 17 games. They get a bye week, and they try to reach that all-important postseason, which obviously leads to the Super Bowl. Before we get going with football, how about Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift? That might be the biggest story. I don't want to bury the lead, but yeah, it looks like Swift Mania is going to keep the numbers up in the ratings for the NFL.
Let's go. Yeah. Swift Mania, Kelce Mania, whichever way you want to look at it. But I'll tell you what, his moves in the end zone, he scored a touchdown on Friday night down in Sao Paulo. What a first dance that's going to be, right?
Awesome. The moose celebration? Yeah, I love that. That was great. But hey, he can still run though. I mean, he's not the youngest anymore, but the way he gets out in space and kind of finds himself loose in grass is unlike many tight ends. You know, he was so far out there. It was crazy. Great first game for the Chargers, by the way.
I attribute those moves, though. He's the cover of GQ magazine. If you have one issue, just go ahead and pick that up. Putting a little shade on his fiancée. All right, Anthony, get serious now about the NFL. What stood out to you the most? Which teams impressed you, and which teams basically laid an egg in your mind?
Well, let's start with that game in Sao Paulo, because one of my tips for a dark horse of the season was the Los Angeles Chargers, and I think they were very impressive against the Kansas City Chiefs. You know, I know that the Chiefs were disrupted with the injury to Xavier Worthy pretty much early on in that game. Travis Kelce wiping out his own teammate in that matchup. But the way that Justin Herbert was playing and performing in that game, and some of the throws that he made in the run towards the end to pretty much ice the game for the Chargers, they're a team that definitely stands out. Looking forward to seeing how they progress now throughout the season. It's going to be tight in that AFC West. They've got matchups to come against the Denver Broncos and the Las Vegas Raiders. So 3 of those AFC West teams won. The one AFC West team that lost was the Chiefs.
Shocker.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Absolute shocker.
Like, we thought the Chiefs would be right back to where they were last year, okay? Almost an undefeated season. And the Eagles, you know, in that Super Bowl, I think that was the first time all season I thought, hey, the Chiefs aren't as good as everyone thought they were. I mean, the Eagles were amazing. But I want to turn our attention to what was an incredible matchup in the AFC. Anthony, the Bills beat the Ravens by a single point in a Sunday night thriller, with Josh Allen leading Buffalo to 3 scores in the final 4 minutes. By that stage, 25,000 fans had left the building because they thought it was all done for. For me, Anthony, a few key takeaways. King Henry is still the king, although he had that one drop that changed the game. Lamar is on another planet, and DeAndre Hopkins can still catch. His first touch in Ravens uniform being that incredible single-handed touchdown catch. Now, for the Bills, I think Joey Bosa's done something great for their defense. But what stood out to you? What is just so impressive about this Bills outfit that they were able to turn things around that way?
Josh Allen. I mean, the guy is literal Superman. You've got to question the Baltimore Ravens' ability to see games out. You know, that game was won, and championship teams win those games. They find a way to win, regardless of which sport it is. And then to give Josh Allen, you know, the quarterback of all quarterbacks, bar Lamar Jackson, the opportunity to advance for a field goal position as well. That was just costly for the Baltimore Ravens. But you look on the offensive side for the Buffalo Bills, and Josh Allen and Keon Coleman, he's got a great receiver there. They brought in Joshua Palmer from the Los Angeles Chargers this offseason as well, so providing extra weapons. But I was impressed with the tight end Dalton Kincaid. There have been a lot who expected of him in previous years, but it seems like finally this guy is flourishing, and he had an impressive performance. And when you have James Cook in the in the backfield as well to complement Josh Allen and that running threat, there's just so many things you've got to deal with on that Buffalo Bills offense.
Well, and let's not forget, Anthony, the 41-year-old kicker that they dragged off the street apparently was on a plane on Thursday to get to the game and managed to kick the winning field goal. Now, if we could find someone like that over in the 49ers, that would be fantastic. So just putting a shout out, anyone up there in Canada that can kick, anyone, Anthony, send them our way.
Well, don't take any from my Winnipeg Blue Bombers, please, because we are still fighting for a place in the playoffs up in the CFL. But you know what? If 40-somethings can do it, I've got a good leg. Come on, Niners. I'd love to. It'd be the greatest honor of my life.
You look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers at 41, Derrick Henry, just the length of NFL careers now are being extended. What do you expect from these ageless wonders at this point? And did Tom Brady set the bar? And how long do you think and how effective do you think someone like Aaron Rodgers can be for the Steelers? Because you talk about great defense, they've got it.
They've got it, yeah, absolutely. I think my slight concern with Aaron Rodgers is their offensive line, because he did get 4 sacks in that game against the Jets, and it's how much his 41-year-old body, he turns 42 in December, can keep taking those hits, especially from the waist down. But you know what? The guy was balling. I was on a program ahead of the new season, asked about Aaron Rodgers, and I said, well, look, he's still he's another year removed from that Achilles injury. It takes a long time to get over an Achilles injury like his, and especially at the age of 41. And I wasn't surprised with how he performed at the weekend. I wasn't expecting 4 touchdowns from Aaron Rodgers against the New York Jets, but very excited to see him over in Dublin in week 4 as well. And I think so for as long as he can stay clean and healthy behind that offensive line, if they can protect him a bit more, then I don't think he's going to be one and done in Pittsburgh this season. He could definitely have another year or two ahead of him. Tom Brady played until his mid to late 40s, and there's no stopping the likes of Aaron Rodgers. And I think these days as well, people generally in society are looking after their bodies more. I'm of a certain age, and I make sure that I work out and exercise each and every day and try and eat as healthy as I can. And I think we've got this sports science now, and these athletes have got it, where they can take care of their bodies.
Look at a guy like Aaron Rodgers at 41, Derrick Henry.
In his 30s now. He's had a back issue, but they've got this wonderful medical truck where it seems to be working its miracles. We'll just see how long he can last throughout this season. But back to Aaron Rodgers and Derrick Henry. I've seen Derrick Henry. I've shook his hand. I've stood next to him. The guy is an absolute unit. And if there's somebody who is dedicated to their body, it is Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
He is like a boxer primed, the 12 weeks training before a heavyweight fight. But that's his whole life. His whole body is he is what you call a specimen, but he is dedicated to his profession. He's dedicated to football. Yeah. He is dedicated to being the best that he can and protect himself. And so many athletes, with the wonders of sports science now, are built for this, which is why we are seeing athletes going longer. That's why Ryan Giggs lasted so long in soccer football with Manchester United, because he used yoga and he ate carefully. Cristiano Ronaldo, another case in point. So I think we're probably going to see, this new age of 40-plus athletes playing long into their careers.
Well, it's probably why they got the 41-year-old kicker, Matt Prater, for the Buffalo Bills as well. 41 is the magic number, it appears. So Aaron Rodgers, he stands out for this weekend. The first week, he threw 4 touchdown passes in his Pittsburgh Steelers uniform and beat his former team, the Jets.
My heart bleeds for Jets fans. I thought I had it bad as a Vikings fan, but it just seems like Jets fans can't get out of their way. Week 1 ended with a great game on Monday night. J.J. McCarthy making his long-awaited debut for the Minnesota Vikings, my squad, and he threw 2 touchdowns and ran for another in the fourth quarter, helping them that 27-24 win over Chicago. But what a great start for the Minnesota Vikings and their new young quarterback. Give me a reason, Anthony, why I should have faith in my Minnesota Vikings. This is their year.
J.J. McCarthy and, of course, the other J.J., Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson scored a touchdown in that game on Monday night against the Chicago Bears. And then when you've got Kevin O'Connell, he is definitely a quarterback whisperer, isn't he? Look what he did with Sam Darnold. Look what he's done with this. I was going to say rookie, but he is essentially a rookie in J.J. McCarthy. The way that McCarthy managed to come back, because it was a bit of an iffy start, wasn't it, up there in Soldier Field for the Vikings and McCarthy. Yeah. But he pulled it together in the way that he led that team. They were so far down in that fourth quarter. There's so much room for optimism. And then let's flip it. And that defense has got to be a top 3 defense in the league. Exciting times for you Vikings fans.
Skull.
Skull. And you know what? We get over in the UK and Ireland, we get a double dose of McCarthy and O'Connell. McCarthy and O'Connell, what an Irish duo, heading to Dublin for the first ever game in Dublin in week 4. They're taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers at Croke Park, and then the Vikings make history heading over to London to play the following week in week 5 against the Cleveland Browns at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And the Vikings are undefeated in the UK. They've won every time they visited.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate. Go ahead and tell the schedule, because he already touched on a couple of them, but there's other games also international this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it fascinates me, and it's also something that I look forward to for next season, because we have one coming to Australia in 2026. It'll be interesting to see how they figure that all out, because we are a very long way away, and the time zone is going to be a massive difference. It's 10 a.m. here when it's Sunday night football there. So 10 a.m. on a Monday they'll be playing, and then getting back and changing time zones and kind of readjusting within a week will be interesting. But the international matches, we've had the Chiefs and the Chargers already in Brazil, Minnesota Vikings, you mentioned Steelers in Ireland, London. We've got London, Germany, and Madrid even, with the Washington Commanders and Miami Dolphins. Are there any other locations, and we've mentioned Australia's coming next, that the NFL should be looking to? And what is it about the international games that they are trying to push? Why is that?
It's money. You got fresh merchandise sales, haven't you, on those respective markets? And
they're looking
at. There you go. You see, hey, and you never know, because the home team in Melbourne next season is going to be the LA Rams. So you never know. They may get the 49ers as their road team in Australia next year. We wait and see. But returning. It's looking like reportedly returning to Mexico next season because they had the Azteca Stadium being redeveloped for the World Cup. So, of course, next summer we've got the World Cup in Mexico, USA, and Canada. So it looks like there'll be an NFL international game back in Mexico. It's all about marketing opportunities and also just getting that NFL shield and that branding out there. And you look at all the teams and the international marketing rights that lots of these teams have now. You're wearing there the 49ers t-shirt. The 49ers got marketing rights out in the UAE. They've got marketing rights in London. The Chiefs, they've said, I've spoken to the head of marketing, they said they want to be the global team. They got international marketing rights in London this year. They've got marketing rights in Ireland. They've been out in Germany. They've played in Germany. They won in Frankfurt. I was out there when they beat the Miami Dolphins 2 years ago over there, and they had this big ship. They called it the Championship, and they had the Lombardi trophies out there in Frankfurt. In London, they've had a big red taxi with the Chiefs all over it, and it's all about being seen, because it's always going to be difficult for American football and the NFL to compete with soccer football. You come to London, and when in just a few weeks' time, when we've got the Vikings and the Browns playing at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, that weekend there's going to be a plethora of Premier League matches being played all around not just the city of London. Then you go outside there and you expand it, and you've got huge clubs with massive fan bases like Manchester United and Liverpool and Newcastle and Aston Villa. And then you go deeper down the English football pyramid, and there's so many teams. And for the NFL to be able to compete with that on an international scale, in Germany with the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2, in Spain with La Liga, wherever you go around the world, they're never going to be able to compete with the World Cup. But if they want to be seen and to be growing, that's where you hit those international markets, and that's where that revenue is going to come.
But do you think that that's a true statement? Do you think that they can never compete with the World Cup? Because I reckon they're getting closer. It's going to be a while, but America leads the world in pop culture. It's why the NBA is watched around the world above all the other basketball leagues. And it's why, to be honest, that the American Soccer League is becoming more and more interesting. They've already got stars like Messi over there. I just think kids around the world grow up watching American TV, American movies, listening to American music. The commercialization of sports started in the US, and I think that is a real key difference with the NFL. That football code comes from the birthplace of pop culture and where everything originates, and it is cool to watch everything over there in America. And that has a hold on not only the sports international community, but the international community as a whole. So I think it'd be interesting to watch that space for sure.
No, I see your point, and it is a cultural thing, and it's locking into the culture of traditional fan bases. And I think you look globally, and you got soccer football, England, Germany, Brazil, Argentina, and it's just generational right through. So perhaps at some point the NFL can grow and stem through these markets and then grow its fan base. But it's certainly got a big job in its hand to be able to keep up with the billions, the viewing audiences of football fans, World Cup fans. The Super Bowl is the single biggest sporting event in the world, but if you had the Super Bowl and the World Cup final on, where are the eyes going to go? You're probably going to lean towards the World Cup final if you've got Messi in Argentina up against Portugal and Ronaldo, for example, or Harry Kane in England.
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, my wife already has achieved Wife of the Year status. She got me tickets to the Vikings and Steelers in Ireland, so I will be a center.
Come on.
Cheering on my Vikings. Let's bring it back to North America, Anthony. You are our neighbors to the north. Love my Canadian friends and family members and college roommates that are from there. The big question I have for you is, you've got NBA, you've got MLS, baseball, hockey, all that stuff. Why do you think the NFL has not gone to Canada north of the border? Because obviously it's a well-established market, great fans, they love their sport. Do you think it's the NHL and the national sport being hockey, and they already have a great league in the CFL? Or do you think it's something more than that? And do you think in the next decade or so we'll see an NFL team in Canada?
I think it's, eyes on the prize. And growing up in Canada, in Winnipeg, not too far from your Vikings in Minnesota, let's point out that when I was playing Pop Warner football as a kid, all eyes on American football was the Canadian football. It was CFL over there. It was a different time where it wasn't as accessible as the NFL is now. But what was interesting was that I've got family members in Toronto, for example, and the Toronto market, let's say you had the 49ers and Joe Montana and Jerry Rice playing, and they were playing, the Raiders of the 80s, early 90s, or whoever. If you were in Toronto, you wouldn't get that matchup. You would only get the Buffalo Bills. Okay, in the 90s, the Bills were very, very good. But let's say it was during an era where the Bills weren't great, but all you were able to get on your broadcast was Buffalo Bills games. So it never expanded. You couldn't get the live games that are as accessible to everybody globally now. And I think, we're talking about generational, accessing generations and future generations to help grow the NFL and American football. For that generation of fans, the NFL was there. It was there. I bought the trading cards. I've got Barry Sanders' rookie trading card, absolutely. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that's locked away in a very, very safe place, I'll have you know. So, we had it, and I had the Panini sticker albums and all that. So we did have access to the NFL, but not in a way, in a viewership like we have today. And I think, getting back to your point, why the NFL why there isn't a team in Canada is mainly down to that, is just building the audience and knowing that there is a fan base there. The NFL has tried the Canadian market. The Buffalo Bills, for a series of years, for a few years, played games in Toronto at, I was going to say the Sky Dome as it was first known, but it's the Rogers Centre where the Toronto Blue Jays play their baseball games. The Toronto Argonauts, which is the CFL team, used to play there at Rogers Centre. So the Bills would play a game a season up in Canada. But Canada is one of those global markets. You look at Vancouver, it's not too far from Seattle. You've got Toronto, as we said, which isn't far from Buffalo. So I think as the NFL expands globally, we're going to see more international games. Canada is definitely going to be one of the markets on the list. But the reason why we haven't got a Canadian NFL team, I believe, and it's not just the CFL, because the CFL isn't huge. With all due respect to it, there are 9 teams up here in the north in Canada, and go Blue Bombers, by the way. But you look at the fan bases, it's not 60,000 fans. It's not perhaps even 20,000 fans at some stadiums. I was at a Hamilton Tiger Cats game not too long ago, and you're probably touching maybe the tens of thousands in attendance there. It is a fun game. It's completely different to the NFL. There are nuances, but I don't think the reason why there are no NFL teams in Canada is because of the CFL. But hockey hockey night in Canada is so big. Yeah. And the fan bases are so rabid. So, just look at Winnipeg, population of 750,000. It is all Winnipeg Jets. That is all they live and breathe for. And the success that we had, they won the President's Cup last year as the number 1 team in the NHL, just couldn't get over the hump in the Stanley Cup. And it's been a long time since Canada has had a successful hockey team. But there is so much interest in the NHL, and the NHL spans across Canada. So whilst you've got your audience there for hockey, okay, in Toronto, there are other market. They've got the NBA, got MLB, a very successful team right now with the Toronto Blue Jays. I just don't think that market is there at the moment. Okay, but who knows? As the NFL expands, it just seems natural to move north, whether it's going to be Vancouver or Toronto. Those would be the 2 ideal markets. And you've got Montreal, but Montreal's struggled at times with, look at the Montreal Expos, the former MLB team, which moved south. But, if from a Canadian perspective, you'd look at Toronto and Vancouver, and those would be the 2 markets that could be there potentially as an expansion team at some point.
Yeah, it seems crazy that they would go all the way around the world to Brazil and Australia and London and not just go over the border to Canada. I think it's like they just take Canada for granted. Canadian audiences are the same time zone. They maybe don't have to work as hard. It's interesting as well. I actually didn't know until recently that the CFL was entirely different rules to the NFL. Yeah. The whole game is different. There's a different ball. It's a bigger ball. There's 12 players instead of 11. It reminds me a lot of, and there are 3 downs instead of 4, which fascinates me. It reminds me a lot of how we see rugby union and rugby league in Australia. We definitely have similarities, and they're totally different games. But if you were on the outside looking in and you had no idea about either of them, you'd think they were pretty similar. So there's definitely, I learned a lot about the CFL, and I can't wait to look into the Blue Bombers. But I wanted to ask you, Anthony, about your thoughts on college football. It is the biggest season yet, I think, the most media attention, the most money through the NIL deals that we've ever seen. There are so many storylines to talk about. We're 2 weeks in. What's caught your eye?
Oh, well, exciting time. Bill Belichick, that's a story in itself, and Bill on the sidelines,
Chapel
of course,
Bill.
North Carolina. Come on, let's go. No Patriots allowed. But the stories on the sideline there. They got the win in week 2, week 1. With it all starting at week 0, it all just blurs into one. But I think that's an exciting story to look out for. And then Clemson always catches my eye. You look at those big dogs in college football, and there's so many great stories out there to keep an eye on. But the one that I think everybody is just so interested in is how Bill Belichick and North Carolina is going to do this season. But it never fails to surprise you in college football because there are upsets aplenty, and it's such a fun sport to get into. And those fans, you lock in, you are so passionate. It is more passionate than the NFL from a fan perspective.
Agreed.
And you get that because it's very tribal, isn't it? It's like the Premier League with that regard. Yes. Like it's us against you, but this is our school, this is our college, and we're not going to give it up without a fight. And it's so passionate and so fun to follow.
But college football is getting more and more fascinating. Not only do we have the rivalries and the pageantry and all of the marching bands and the songs that come on out as players run out, but there's a lot of money in it now. And the NIL has changed everything. Name, image, and likeness. Anthony, apparently now a quarterback can be bought for around $1 million. A top-end quarterback is going for around that money. And many of the other positions are hundreds of thousands of dollars that the university has to be able to offer this player to move over. There are a lot more trades happening. It's almost like, I say trades, it's transfer window, but it's almost like they're being traded like an NFL franchise. What are your thoughts on how that's changed?
Well, I think it's great. It's more power to the athletes. And look, these guys have only got a short shelf life. And if you get injured playing college football and it's a bad injury, that could impact your potential career. So I think from an insurance standpoint, it's there, and that's what players have been fighting for decades, really, on that front. So I think it's great that finally, the NCAAF is now looking and caring. They're it's not. I don't want to sound like that they never cared about the athletes,
right.
But they are putting the athletes first. I think on that standpoint. So I'm all for it. It makes it a whole lot more interesting. It adds another element and dynamic to the storylines and the narratives connected to those players in college football, and it certainly raises a debate and talking points amongst fans. And like the transfers never happened like they did, like they do now back in the day. Whereas like it's almost like transfer deadline day in the Premier League, or big trades. We'd seen the Micah Parsons trade from the Cowboys to the Green Bay Packers. We get these storylines again. It just stirs up an interest in college football. But yeah, I think protecting the players, that is absolutely essential, and that's key, because lots of these guys, they go to college, they're signed up by these teams because football is what they know, and it's where their talents lie. And if you go away from football, maybe academically, if anything happens to these players, what is their future? And their whole lives have been built up to this point, and some of them could be exceptional talents, and they could absolutely miss out on a whole life. So they've got that insurance behind them.
Todd, I know you're a massive fan of Arch Manning, the quarterback at Texas, and he is actually kind of against the grain because he's stayed in the same college for a number of years as QB2. He's been the backup for 2 years, and now he's finally got his chance to shine. After the first 2 weeks, how do you feel he's going, and how's he going to go this season?
Well, I'm going to say, following up on what Anthony had to say, if you're getting paid that much money, why would you leave college? I mean, it's just amazing that what they're getting paid to stay there. I think Arch is going to be a fine quarterback. Obviously, a stumble there at Ohio State opening weekend. But I guess my trouble with the NIL, and it's not me seeing kids get paid. That's fine. I have no problem with that. But the NCAA is just basically a small little stepping stone to the NFL. And it's just a little pit stop for them. I don't think we can call them student athletes anymore. I think they are guns for hire for sake, because you're going to see a lot of players are going to play maybe 3 different colleges in their career before they go to the NFL, rather than just playing at one. And again, it gives the player obviously more freedom and latitude, which I'm all for. There's so much money out there, TV money, whatever. I'd like to see the players get some of that share, but where does it end? And I guess my concern would be you are really pushing the parameters of making it NCAA football into a super league, where you're only going to have SEC, Big Ten, and maybe a handful of other teams that are going to be able to compete. Because if you're a young man and you want to play college football and you're talented, the bidding's open. And I don't see how a team, let's say a team like Utah State University in Logan, Utah, can compete with USC, Alabama, Florida State. They just can't. They can't pay the money. So naturally the talent is going to matriculate to those bigger schools. And I think if we do that too much, then it's going to be a whole different landscape in less than a decade's time.
Yeah, and look at the Pac-12. Look how things have changed there, and some of the colleges that love to play up and punch against the your Oregons of this world, and that's definitely an impact. Interesting what you said about Arch Manning as well, by the way, because watching his favorites odds dip up and down, he dropped I think from favorite to third favorite after that opening weekend. And then last week he had that great game, and suddenly, he's odds on again for to win the Heisman for college football this year.
The first game, it was never going to be amazing, and he comes up against the national champions, the defending national champs. So, of course, that's always going to be a tough one. I also think that game, especially, very defensive battle. And I think, and I've heard this from coaches as well, that the first few rounds of college football tend to favor defenses because as we have so many new players coming into the offensive scheme, they've all had to learn the playbook, and they're coming into maybe a new program, learning all these new. Some of them have new coaches. The offenses take a little longer to step up to that next level, whereas defenses, they've just got to clamp down, do what they do, know how to play exactly, whether they're man or zone defense. So I'll be expecting to see more from Arch Manning. He stepped up against San Jose. I mean, an easy win to get the monkey off the back, right? But the next few games, I think, are going to define Arch Manning. And of course, college football is so fascinating because you have so few games. Every single game counts. And, one loss here against a nothing team can send you out of the playoffs now.
Yeah, and you can liken that to the NFL as well with defense, because just look at the matchups in week one. So many double-digit games were the under on the points total line. On Sunday, going into Sunday Night Football, I think only 2 games actually hit the over. And then, of course, Sunday Night Football, we had the game that smashed the over with the total line. And that's just the case in point that defenses generally are on top early in the season. It makes sense while offenses are trying to work things out, and then we find parity as the season goes on, both in college and in the NFL, where those offenses, they work out how to open up those defenses, and they can work schematically where to pick on those defenses, and that's where we see points aplenty. Unless, of course, you're the Ravens and the Bills.
All right, so we're going to turn the page, and we're going to talk predictions. Anthony, that's what we have you on here. This is the big money time. So give us your predictions. Any surprise playoff teams? Who do you think will dominate, and who do you think we'll see in the Super Bowl and walk away with the title this year?
Well, Blue Bombers for the Grey Cup north of the border in Canada, but yes. I really do like the Chargers this year. I said earlier that they were my dark horse prediction. You look at their head coach. You're wearing the 49ers t-shirt there. You know the wonders that he worked. Jim Harbaugh, the head coach in San Francisco. Things just didn't work out in the end with the general manager, Trent Baalke. But you look at the success that he instantly brought to San Francisco. He had success at Michigan, and then he walked out a champion, national championship. He brought the title to Michigan, and he's got a wonderful quarterback in Justin Herbert. We saw just what they can do as a pairing, as a head coach and a quarterback on Friday night, week one in Sao Paulo. So very, very excited to follow really the progression of Justin Herbert under Jim Harbaugh. They've got a fantastic running back in Omari Hampton as well, and I think that's going to just add that next layer for the Los Angeles Chargers. And last year they were the number 1 defense in the league, and they look good again Friday in week 1 in Brazil. So the Chargers are definitely one to keep an eye on. JJ McCarthy, I mean, I'm not just saying it for you, Todd, but we saw the way that the Vikings came back, and that defense, complementary football is so important in the NFL. So, with Kevin O'Connell there, another genius, another great head coach, with a young quarterback. So that's going to be exciting to watch. And then another surprise package, I think, to keep an eye on for is going to be, it's got to be the Pittsburgh Steelers with Coach Tomlin. The guy knows how to win. Yes, it just depends on the health and safety, really, of Aaron Rodgers. DK Metcalf, what an investment that was. He was just having fun out there. I think they've got to work out their backfield with the running backs. Right. They're in a tricky division in the AFC North, but if anybody knows how to play the AFC North, it is Mike Tomlin. I've been fortunate enough to go into the Pittsburgh Steelers facilities, and that whole place, the whole complex, the team, the franchise, the buildings is just geared to success. When you walk in, the first thing you are greeted with is all the Lombardi trophies that they've won. And that's what the players see, and that's what that feeds into them when you go into the facilities there in Pittsburgh. It's one of the most storied franchises in the NFL. And they've got a guy, we can question some of the things that he says, but he is very, very smart, Aaron Rodgers. You can question some of his decisions off the field. Yes, you're entirely right to do so. But as a player and also as a human being, he's a very smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Throughout this offseason, following his press conferences, Aaron Rodgers talked about just bringing unity with his teams, calming down that offensive line, because he knows that he is this figure in the NFL. He's completely aware of that, but he is just calming that team down, and that is that added level of leadership that you don't really get to see outside, but on the inside, he's bringing that unity there, and they work together as a team. And it was a team that won it because it was a field goal, a 60-yard field goal by Boswell at the end that won that game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Tough game on the road as well, given the circumstances to the New York Jets. So the Steelers are going to be one to look out for. I don't think they can win the Super Bowl, but they could certainly be knocking on the door of the playoffs come January.
All right, and the last thing before we get you out of here, we got to ask you one more question because I really want to hear more about this. Tell us a little bit about your book, The Greatest American Football Story That Has Never Been Told. What's it about, and how did it all come about, and what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, well, you know what? We talked about CFL and NFL and the nuances there. This story, it's a true story. It happened during the Second World War over in London. And really, the way that it came about, I stumbled across it. I was working on a different project related to the Cold War. One of the subject matters from that story, that feature that I'd worked on as a documentary, whilst I was researching it, I stumbled across this game called the T-Ball. And it was a game that was played in front of 30,000 spectators in London during the Second World War at White City Stadium. And Spitfires were flying overhead on the lookout for the German Luftwaffe. So the more I explored it, the more I got to just unfold this incredible story. And I was I was like a detective trying to track down family members, and I did, and I got all these stories about these wonderful men who played for their countries in this game. So what had happened was essentially there was a guy called Dennis Whittaker who went on to become Brigadier General of Canada, and he was an all-pro in the CFL. He was fresh out of college. He went to the Royal Military College in Toronto. And when war started, he knew that he was going to get called up at some point, and he was shipped over to England in 1941. But in 1939, he was an all-pro quarterback for the Hamilton Tigers. So, imagine Tom Brady going out to war, and Aaron Rodgers, as we've discussed, but these guys did, and a whole lot of the CFL players, a lot of the star talent from the CFL came over to Europe to fight. And Dennis Whittaker was given a weekend leave. So what do you do when you're on a weekend leave? You go to the pub, of course. So he sat in a pub in London, and then he heard this American talking about all this American football equipment. And I got Dennis Whittaker thinking, and he had a conversation with this guy, and this American said, I've got enough to field 6 teams. So Dennis Whittaker went back to the powers that be and sold this idea of a game. Let's have Canadians against Americans. Just think about what this would do for morale. Because go back to Dieppe, and he'd seen the slaughter and everything that these Canadians had been through, and morale was low at that point because it's so cold and so wet, and these guys were waiting and waiting and waiting for action. And it got signed off. And it was going to be played at White City Stadium. And there will be spectators in the crowd. Americans and Canadians will bring British people in as well. 30,000 people were in there. And then the book then expands looking at NFL international. So as we've discussed here with the games in Germany and in England, etc., it looks then, it's a celebration looking at the growth of American football and how that's managed to grow across the world.
He is Anthony Wootton, the author of The Greatest American Football Story That Has Never Been Told. I know what next book I'll be buying soon. Anthony, we appreciate your time joining us here and your insight. We hope to have you back as the season progresses. Thanks for joining us here on This Sporting Planet.
Thank you. I'll get you Guinness in Dublin.
All right, Kate, we wouldn't be top journalists if we didn't give our predictions for the Super Bowl. So I'm going to give you first crack at this one. Who is going to be in the big game and who's going to walk away with the title?
Okay, hot take. I reckon Eagles are going straight back to the Super Bowl. They are the new Chiefs. They could be in for a dynasty, the likes of we've seen over there in Chiefs Kingdom. As for the AFC, I think that's more up in the air. I'd like to see the AFC Championship be a repeat of Bills-Ravens. The MVP off with Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen is just box office, and I think the Bills get up. So Super Bowl is going to be Buffalo Bills and the Eagles.
Who's winning?
Oh, gosh. I want it to be the Bills. I so want that for Josh Allen, you know? Yeah. What about you? What do you think?
Well, great minds think alike. I really think the Buffalo Bills, and I know a lot of this is going off of week one with Josh Allen's performance. They just look like a team that's gelled already, and they look so strong. Now, all this is predicated on keeping healthy. Obviously, if the Bills lose Josh Allen or something like that, they're in big trouble. But I think the Buffalo Bills, I'd love to say my Minnesota Vikings, and one of these teams gets their first Super Bowl win after going to the big game multiple times, but I just don't know if I trust the Vikings to go the duration. I really like the Detroit Lions. That's a team I've just been thinking about, and the LA Rams. So between those three teams, but I think it might be Buffalo's year. I'd love to see Detroit get back there and win it. Some reason I feel like the LA Rams could be a team. My dark horse to great this season is the Houston Texans. So there's a little bit of insight.
Yeah, right. Hey, that's a great call. I think that the Niners, for my team, we are up against it. We've got a few injuries at the moment. Of course, George Kittle has done a hamstring. Purdy is iffy at the moment with the shoulder injury, so it may not be our year. We might look to reload and rebuild, but I think for a dark horse, the Commanders, Jaden Daniels is looking really good, and they could come out of nowhere in the NFC. So it's all open, all up for grabs, and we can't wait.
It's a long season. Remember, folks, 18 weeks, 17 games, so don't lose faith if your team starts a little slow. All right, we are nearly out of time, but before we go, Kate, what are you looking forward to down in Australia in your part of the world in the next few weeks?
Okay, it is the best time of year in Australia, Todd. September, the sun is out, the days are getting longer, flowers are coming out, and of course, it's footy finals. AFL finals started this week, and every single game was a one-score game. There were plenty of 30-point comebacks, all kinds of storylines going on, and the grand final is just a few weeks away. For my tip, I think we might even see another Brisbane Lions against Collingwood for the grand final, which of course has happened on multiple occasions in recent years. Those two are just so good at the moment. I think they might go back to back again. And as for breaking football news, football meaning soccer, of course.
Go on.
I have a massive bit of news for you, Todd. While we've been recording this podcast, Australian Ange Postecoglou, none other than Ange, has agreed to a new deal. He's going to be a coach and he's going to Nottingham Forest. That's right. After they sacked Nuno Espirito Santo, they're going to go with Ange. So Aussie Ange, he's got a contract and it's until the summer of 2027, just a few months, of course, after he was sacked as Spurs boss after leading his side to the Europa League victory.
Well, that's it for this episode. Make sure to subscribe to the show via your favorite podcast provider so you never miss an episode, and make sure to leave us a review, as long as it's nice. Now, whatever you want to do. And we've even got video versions of our podcast on Spotify for you to enjoy as well. You can watch the show on YouTube as always, and we'd love for you to get involved in the discussion in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking on everything on the sports we've discussed today in this edition of The Sporting Planet.
That's right, and we'll be back next week, and we have some really exciting episodes lined up for you during the rest of September, including a preview of this month's Ryder Cup. Until then, from Todd, myself, and the rest of this Sporting Planet team, goodbye.